hop in really quickly and answer two questions that I have received via email or via the Blackboard posts. I apologize. My laryngitis seems to be getting worse. I imagine that after November 8th, I'll be in a little better condition. But for right now, we're just going to sort of have to deal with my voice being what it is, which is why I'm going to make this fairly short tonight. But I'm going to talk about your papers and I'm going to talk about the exam as has been requested of me. Before I do that, I need to answer another question that I saw on the Blackboard discussions about Oratorio Day is oh man, you know what? The institution of the orator or the education of the orator, however you want to translate that for yourself. I never claimed to understand Italian, even though I am a quarter Italian. This question is why did the authors or the editors choose these particular sections of Cicero's work when they could have used a number of things? And I just said Cicero and I'm like Quintilian. See, I'm tired too. I probably should have done this earlier in the day. So why is it that in Quintilian's work did they choose only these certain sections of it? And honestly, the question might have been about Cicero's work, and the answer is going to be the same. The works that you're seeing are not just edited in the sense that they're translated. They're also edited in the sense that content was left out. This is true of everyone that you've read and everyone that you looked at from Aristotle on. How do editors of books go about choosing what works and what pieces of works they're going to share with you is, generally speaking, a pretty consistent process across the board. First, they look at what translation is the most credible or the most believed to be credible. For example, for Aristotle, the Kennedy translation of Ars Rhetoricae is usually known as the most accepted and best translation that we have. Scholars have looked at these and tested them and sort of decided that that was the best translation. That doesn't mean it's the only one or even the only good one. It's just normally what we fall back on. And what we do is we go through that translation, and whatever it is that we want to talk about that we think is, number one, still relevant, number two, understandable and relatable, number three, clear, number four, not simply just more examples or explanations of things, but introducing new topics and new ideas. And then number five, what they feel is necessary for students to understand in order to say that they have some grasp of the particular text that they are excerpting. I can't say it. There's all sorts of bad talking tonight. So essentially, the reason that those volumes were chosen for the Institute is because those were the ones that the editor felt were the most relevant, but also the most helpful in understanding all of Quintilian. To give you an example, I think at one point I sort of like off the cuff said, don't worry about the topoi. And I didn't really mean like that the topics, topoi, are horrible or not helpful, as much as just I really would rather you focus on other things, such as how to develop ethos or any of the artificial proofs. Because while the topics are interesting, and it's a good way to talk about really general argumentation, it's really not necessarily pertinent to understanding the whole of the theory of rhetoric according to Aristotle in that case. Much the same, the Institute had a great deal of work that went into excruciating detail I don't know if you guys had this part or not, but at one point, there's actually a discussion about style that involves what color of toga to wear and whether or not you should strip off your toga in an effort to gain attention to particular parts of your speech. I mean, there's some real detail in there that isn't always necessary to understanding the whole of the work. Hopefully that answers your questions well enough. You are certainly more than welcome to go and get all the volumes. The other thing to keep in mind is that when they refer to books, for example, Aristotle's On Rhetoric is broken down into 3 books. We don't literally mean like the physical books and may not necessarily mean the physical volumes, although obviously in some cases that is the case, but we may just be simply talking about sections that were labeled book 1, section 1, paragraph 1, etc., by the people who wrote down the oral tradition of what Aristotle might have meant, Plato, Cicero, Quintilian, and so on. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, by all means, please clarify and ask me again. And as you all know, I will be checking back on Friday so that you have the weekend to sort of absorb some of my answers and responses. Okay, so the next thing that we want to talk about is I'm checking my time. The second thing that we want to talk about is your exam. The exam will be up online and available for a period of a week, at which point you can contribute at any time to the exam. You might be wondering what the heck I'm talking about. Well, as I told you, this is going to be an experiment. So remember that VoiceThread app that I had you guys download and sign into and make sure that it was working? Well, we're going to use that for the exam. So the way this is going to work is I will put up questions that you all can then respond to each other, use video of yourself answering, use the typing document sort of messaging, text messaging, whatever you want to do to contribute to the conversation. And what we'll do is we'll just have a week-long conversation about all of these questions that I pose. It's interesting and funky, and it might be really, really cool. It might fail miserably, but in the event that it is really, really cool, then we'll do that for our final exam. If it's not really, really cool, then we'll go back to a traditional writing format for your final exam. But I'm kind of hoping that this works because it could be a lot of fun. But more importantly, it could be a much better way for us to learn, particularly in the form of discussion. If you're wondering where this comes from, I went to Penn State University and talked to the head of online education there in the continuing education program. And I said, here's what I do with my classes. I sit them down in a room. There's 10 or 15 of us. I pose questions and just let you guys talk. And then I evaluate that discussion. You might be thinking, oh, well, number one, that's really vague, and how does anybody know what they're going to score? And of course, the idea is that the score is not what matters. What matters is the content of the conversation. And so then you might say, oh, well, that means everybody ends up with an A. Well, I mean, you know how it is. Not everybody puts in the same amount of effort, but to be honest, it's very difficult to do poorly, especially to fail, but even to get a C on an event like that, you'd have to work pretty hard to not work very hard, if you get the idea. So when I told her that that's what I like to do in my classroom for my exams and that I was putting this online, and how do I capture that? Because like I said in the beginning of this class, one of the goals is to make you conversant in rhetoric. And so, I need to see you converse. And so she gave me that VoiceThread idea, and here we are. So what will happen is during the week that particular exam is taking place, I will put it up on VoiceThread, put up my questions on VoiceThread, and you all can start to respond to them. And you'll see me maybe respond, but I would rather stay out of it and not necessarily prod you guys on that. So hopefully that helps you understand how it's going to work. I will, of course, give you plenty of notice when I'm going to post that and give you, a week's period of time to respond to it so that you can respond to it in your own time and however you want to do that. We're not looking for, pages of response here or a 15-minute video. We're mainly just looking for short responses and answers that we all can participate in and respond to. Last but not least is your paper. If you go onto Blackboard, you can actually go to the assignments section in the left-hand bar and click on that, and it will have paper assignments there. I've tried to check it on my phone, and whenever I check it on my phone, the formatting really screws up the assignment. So you need to go to a computer or maybe an iPad or an iPad mini, something that will be bigger than your phone. I mean, well, in fairness, I have a 6S iPhone, so that's not a huge screen. They were made intentionally to be small. But if you have the iPhone 6, I have the iPhone 6S. My husband has that iPhone 6S Plus. So that level of screen, you might get the formatting correctly. So the assignment says that what you need to do is there's section A, B, C, D, all the way through E. I'm checking my time, and this white shirt is not helping the white clock. So A, B, C, D through E, and you basically need to choose at least one theorist from at least 3 of those divisions and explain to me one thing that they all have in common. I'm going to give you an example. And if anybody picked this thread, this idea, and is concerned, I would hope that we didn't just magically come up with the same 3 theorists. So here's my suggestion. Some of you will look and see 3 theorists that you really want to work with. You read them, you like their work, and you'll try to find a thread between those 3. Some of you will do it another way, which is to pick an idea that you really like and see how it's played out or described by 3 or more theorists over a period of time. So picking from those areas. For example, I have a real sort of attachment to credibility, which means that ethos is really, really important to me. So I might want to look at the way that Aristotle and Cicero or Quintilian maybe, and then maybe Margaret Fell, who's sort of an interesting person to throw in here, how they establish credibility, how they work with the artificial proof of ethos, and how ethos changes or progresses or is represented vis-a-vis those particular theorists. So there's an example of how you might do it. So as you can see, you have a very clear organizational pattern set up. The paper has to be somewhere between 8 and 15 pages. You have to have as many sources as are necessary to demonstrate to me that you understand this concept, idea, theory that you're tracing through these different theorists and time periods. I hope this helps a bit. If not, post your questions or send me an email and I'll respond to you on Friday. Have a good one, everybody.